All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, John Iderlow with you guys today. We got a huge show as usual for you guys. And we make a lot of big ones, we make a lot of little ones. Not only are we gonna tackle Trump's congratulatory call with Putin in a little bit. We got the Austin bomber blowing themselves up, obviously, in just a sec. But later in the program, Zuckerberg finally comes out of his cave. I'm being a little unfair. I'll explain the nuance of that story later. I actually think the timing is perfectly fine. But anyway, he came out today and apologized for what happened with Cambridge Analytica. Meanwhile, we have news that Cambridge Analytica is reconstituting as a different company. They think they're so clever, like we're not going to catch them.
So
anyway,
didn't Blackwater do that?
Yeah, well,
at Halliburton.
Funny you should say that, because one of the guys that they're connected to is Eric Prince, the founder of Blackwater.
He's been a busy boy.
Yes, he has. Yeah. So big show for you guys tonight, and then of course later tonight you got Rebel headquarters, you got a post game, you got old school, and I want to let you guys know this weekend, March for Our Lives. We're going to be covering it. Emma Viglin's going to be in Washington, D.C. covering the main march. But the LA march is oftentimes as big, if not bigger, than the D.C. march. And Hassan Piker not only will be covering it, but it looks like he'll be speaking at that event, introducing some of the students. So make sure you check out that coverage over the weekend. All right, John, what's next?
Just in advance of the first story, I apologize if I go into like a coughing fit. Still a little bit sick, but working through it.
That's Young Turks 101, where the hosts do nothing but cough.
We are sick all the time.
Yes.
We live in squalor. Okay, for the past several weeks, Austin and the surrounding area have been terrorized by a series of bombings of seemingly increasingly complexity and randomness as well. But today that appears to have finally come to an end. Police identified who they thought the person responsible for the bombings was. Identified, I believe, a hotel that the person was staying in Round Rock, Texas, and moved in to confront the bomber, who was in a car and apparently detonated some sort of explosive as they approached and blew himself up. The police also shot at him, although there hasn't been any confirmation of whether they actually hit him or that contributed to his death, anything like that. But that is the good news overall, that they did find him. He is now dead, actually. Interim Austin Police Chief Brian Manley said that they had broken the case in the past 24 to 36 hours using store receipts, internet searches, and surveillance footage to identify him, which we'll have a little bit more on. But if you haven't been following this story, and we've been covering it pretty much every day, here's a map showing how broad the pattern of bombings is, that you had originally on sort of the east side of Austin, a series of 3 bombings that looked like they were predominantly targeting prominent members of the black community in Austin. Then you had that spread a little bit. You had the tripwire explosive in Southwest Austin. You had 2 bombs, one of which went off at a FedEx facility north of San Antonio. And then you had this incident in Round Rock.
Yeah, so great police work. I had a sense that his time was limited when he started using FedEx. And I didn't want to be glib and do predictions or whatever on a topic like this. But it's one thing when you leave unmarked packages on people's porches. They don't have video cameras usually on their houses. Most regular folks don't, right? You start going to use facilities to send your packages, there's video cameras everywhere.
Yeah, I'm still very, very impressed with them. I mean, granted, they had 350 to 500 people on it, which thank God they did. But I imagine at a FedEx facility, I mean, how many people go in a given day? Like, I still imagine it would be very difficult. The one thing that contributed to it was that apparently he ordered exotic batteries. He ordered those online and used them in the explosives. Tracking those batteries, which are apparently somewhat rare, helped them to find him as well.
Great detective work.
Exactly, yes.
You know, divorced from any politics, I really don't mean this in a political context. The FBI from time to time does great work in tracking down terrorists. They actually have a much higher percentage success rate in tracking down Muslim terrorists. Bless their hearts for doing that, you know, and partly because of resources spent in that area. But either way, they have done sometimes phenomenal work, and all the authorities here involved in tracking down people and preventing further terrorist attacks. So credit where credit is due.
Yeah, there was actually, I believe in Michigan, I think it happened today, it might have been yesterday, a family reported one of the, I think he was 15 years old, a kid who they believed would do some sort of attack on a school, and they got the kid and he had guns and bombs, and he had been planning to do some sort of attack at, I believe it was Paw Paw was the name of the school, but he was turned in and he was caught. Now in this particular case, although the bomber is dead and that is the good news, that doesn't necessarily mean that this entire thing is over. They are considering the possibility that there could be accomplices, although they do think that this individual was linked to all of the attacks. That doesn't rule out the possibility of accomplices, although there's no evidence of that at this point. And there is also some concern that he could have set explosives before he killed himself, although again, there is no evidence of that yet. But police are telling people in the Austin area to still be on the lookout in the near future, just in case.
All right, so now let's go into the identity of the bomber. So it looks like we've got him. He's a 24-year-old white male. By we got him, I don't mean the fact that they killed him or he killed himself, actually. That is clear. I mean that we have a sense of who he is. So he apparently was a conservative. Now, big caveat there. They have a blog from this guy, Mark Condit, and they believe that this is the same Mark Condit. It's from 2012, so he's
6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was 17 at the time, and there he says he's a conservative, but he also says I'm not that politically inclined. And then something that I was weirdly haunting to me is in that blog he explained that he enjoyed cycling, parkour, tennis, reading, and listening to music, and it just made him seem more human, and of course,
and thus I'm not interested in it then.
Yeah, no, but it was just—it's weird that this guy who was a terrorist and terrorized this entire city, and we had to put 300 to 500, police and law enforcement guys tracking him, liked parkour, and then when saying tennis, I pictured him, volleying back and forth. And how does a guy living in the middle of Texas who seems like an average random dude decide, oh, you know what, I'm gonna be a terrorist bomber and I'm gonna go murder all these people?
Perhaps we'll find out. I mean, we have what we believe are some of his writings on a few topics to try to get an idea of why he might have done this. One of the areas was talking about how they bring in killers or something like that. And obviously this is years before, but like, dude, you became a murderer. You were an indiscriminate person killing whoever you could. I mean, the later bombs, I mean, originally they were sort of somewhat simple explosives, but the later bombs were packed with nails and metal shrapnel to try to cause as much mayhem and destruction as possible.
Yeah, actually, let me highlight two of those. Well, now seems glaring hypocrisy now that we know what he did. Some of the posts celebrated a column by ultra-conservative Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen, but look, I don't put that on Thiessen. He's not a good guy. I don't agree with him, but he can't control everyone who reads his column. That's crazy. There's crazy people who read and watch all sorts of different things. But the reason I bring that up is because one that he really liked was how Thiessen was talking about how dumb it was to ever release terrorists, much less a senior one, and doesn't care what kind of information they could provide. You must stop the terrorists. The guy who liked that column turned out to be a terrorist. But by the way, I mean, again, we'll find out a lot more in the coming days, but based on the little information we have now. But for right-wing terrorists, they really don't believe that they are terrorists. They think that that's just a Muslim thing. And they're like, oh no, when I murder people, I'm doing it because I'm a patriot. And so to what degree he's a right-winger, we know a little bit here, obviously based on this evidence. To what degree he's a terrorist is absolutely clear. And in previous right-wing terrorists, the guys who were looking to blow up the apartment building they thought the Somali immigrants lived in, and the list goes on, dozens and dozens of right-wing terrorists. When you ask them, they're like, terrorists, what name so? Yeah. I was just going to murder people I didn't like for political reasons or religious reasons. That's kind of the textbook definition of a terrorist.
Yeah, I mean, last week we had those guys who bombed a mosque and tried to bomb an abortion clinic. Thankfully, they didn't know what they were doing, so the bomb didn't actually go off. And in the case of the mosque, thankfully, no one was actually injured. I wonder what they think. Do they know that they are in fact terrorists? That they specifically said they were trying to send a message to Muslims to get out of the country, killing indiscriminately, killing innocents to accomplish a political goal. sounds like the textbook definition of terrorism. I don't know if they understand that that's what they were doing. We have more information about some of the things that he wrote, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not even sure that I care. As you said, the quotes are old. We could find out in the end that they weren't actually him, although it seems pretty sure that they were. And I think that we understand probably enough at this point. Perhaps more information will come out. He didn't like gay people. He didn't think abortion was okay. He sounds pretty socially conservative. That's the long and short of it. But there is one other aspect of this story. In trying to figure out why the Austin bomber attacked the people that he did, attacked in the places that he did, Fox News host Geraldo had a theory, and he's getting a lot of criticism for it. Here is him explaining what he thinks.
Because I believe that there is, in the location, in the nexus of these crimes, there is some explanation as to what he was doing. Austin is not only the capital of Texas, it is a dot of deep blue in a sea of red. A very liberal town. There was a lot of attention to this liberal island in the conservative sea that might have had something to do with his choice of targets and the timing of these.
So of course, Fox News viewers needed a safe space after that discussion. Yeah, look. I think that he was very clearly speculating. It looks like the guy who did it was a conservative. Now, but a lot of the stuff was written 7 years ago, and it might have been that he was very conservative, but that's not why he did the bombings. Who knows, right? So we don't know yet. The authorities will tell us. Is it interesting or fair speculation to think, well, he's got a lot of really conservative writings online, and he attacked the most liberal part of Texas? It's fine speculation. You might not agree with it, you might not like it, but it's nothing to get triggered over. It's a perfectly normal hypothesis.
Yeah, but I mean, the comments were, they did not like what Geraldo said. Obviously, they were, as we said, triggered. Yeah, look, I honestly don't know. I think it's possible that there was some sort of political thing. I mean, you have the reason someone wants to commit an attack, and then you have why they choose the targets that they do, which are sort of separate things. We might have some sort of political explanation later on as to why he chose to do the attacks at all. But in terms of attacking around Austin, he lived around Austin, and it seems to me that people typically attack the places that they're around. Like, conservatives are constantly shocked, like, why this shooter went into this school and shot it up. It must have been because it was a gun-free zone. When 9 times out of 10 or more, they went to that school, or they currently go to that school, which seems like a more relevant fact than the fact that it's a gun-free zone. It might simply be that he lived a little bit north of Austin in a suburb, and so he attacked the place around him. It's not always the case. The terrorists that we were just talking about with the mosque and the abortion bombing, they drove quite far to attack different places, but it doesn't seem rare.
Yeah, so as John pointed out, there's tweet after tweet from the right wing who are like, how dare you ever say it might be a conservative? By the way, let's note for the record that those are the same people who scream at the top of their lungs the minute that it's a Muslim name. Wait, no, you gotta say it. You gotta say it's a Muslim name. Name it, name it, name it. Islamic extremist terrorism, blah, blah, blah. Now when you say, hey, the guy might have been conservative. Oh, how could you? How could you? I'm melting, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of balance here. It's what Geraldo did is generally harmless. And I'm gonna give one more piece of context here. Just take one of the tweets here. Jay Richards writes, I'm a little perplexed once again. Geraldo Rivera is saying a white male may have been getting revenge on the city of Austin for being a sanctuary city. What is wrong then with saying an illegal brown male drives drunk and kills an entire family or innocent white person? First of all, I don't think that Geraldo emphasized the whiteness of the person. He emphasized that he was conservative.
Well, mainly there, he just emphasized that the location attacked was liberal.
Yeah.
He didn't even, it might have been in the longer clip, but he didn't really talk about the guy.
Yeah, and in the beginning, the authorities, not Geraldo, the authorities were concerned that it might have been a hate crime because it targeted the first 3 or 4 bombs, 3 bombs at least, targeted just minorities, and they thought that was disproportionate and curious. They didn't make no conclusions. Later, there were other random bombs that went off that had nothing to do with minorities. But they were concerned that a person might be targeting people for their race.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas when an undocumented immigrant is involved in any tragic situation, including driving drunk and killing someone, there is no one charging that he did it to kill white people. He got drunk and killed somebody because he was drunk driving, there's no intent to go kill white people. So you're bringing race into it for no reason at all. And the fact that they just cannot distinguish that is, I think, telling. For them, everything is about race, but then they will project and say, oh, I can't believe Geraldo's talking about race, when he didn't mention race at all. And on the bomber, one last thing here. We mentioned his hypocrisy in the other story about how he was criticizing terrorists, and it turns out he was a terrorist. But he was consistent on one issue. He argued fervently for the death penalty, and then gave himself one. So,
well, he wasn't being hypocritical.
Yeah, that's right. He was consistent on that, and that's about the only thing apparently that we could say positive about him.
Yeah, anyway, just as I mean, I lived in Austin for over 5 years, and the whole time this was going on over the past few weeks, I've been thinking about how awful it must be to live there every moment, terrified of what might happen. And so it's obviously a huge load off their minds and mine as a former resident that finally the situation seems to be resolved.
All right, great. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, a situation unresolved. Trump's love affair with Vladimir Putin. Oh no, we said it. We didn't say it, he did. So he congratulated Putin on a completely ridiculous, preposterous election, so-called election. I wonder why he did that. Anyway, that is among the stories we'll cover when we come back. Look, we're doing interviews over there at youtube.com/TYT interviews, and we've done some amazing ones recently. So now, of course, you know the person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders. Why not back him during the 2016 primaries? Why be a Democrat at all?
And we're in the time where you cannot, in good conscience, sit on the sidelines of history in 2017.
Hey, Cenk, what's up?
Aaron, I'm reading some of the comments on a YouTube video I did. What's a cuck? Go.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right now.
Did anybody call for an editor?
Need this in an hour.
But you're an editor too.
Love you.
You have in common with your daughter?
I was going to say sex, but I can't relate that.
He said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you guys. Captain Jinglepants says, my mood instantly perks up when I hear that TYT intro music. Well, thank you, appreciate that. The Mathematician says, yes, but John, he was white, so by conservative logic, he's not a killer.
He's a lone wolf.
Well, Gabby picks up on that theme. It's good that the FBI figured out that the Austin bomber was an unemployed white male. It would have been scary if there was a terrorist in Texas. Carrie says, these bombings have had me rattled. He was caught 15 minutes from my home. My stomach lurched a bit when I arrived home this afternoon and saw a large package at my door.
Oh my God.
And look, we all get packages at our doors, right?
I use Amazon every day.
Yeah.
Basically.
And so everybody in Austin was terrified of every package that came to their door. And then Old Turk says, folks, he was homeschooled. We need to stop homeschooling until we figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah, you'll notice there was nothing like that. There was just, the killer is dead. Great work, FBI. That was the only tweet.
Yep.
That's it.
And finally, Sexy Speed Racer says, happy birthday to Cenk Uygur. Why, thank you, I appreciate that. A good way to celebrate the birthday is becoming a member, tytnetwork.com/join. All right, guys, much love. All right, what's next, John?
We've got a scandal for you. Earlier this week, Vladimir Putin was reelected, will lead Russia on until 2024, I believe. He's obviously been the leader for quite a while at this point, but he won. He got something like 74% of the vote, which I think was a nice subtle way to run things. I think that driving it to 90, 95% would probably be crazy. You can't do 99, you're not Saddam Hussein. So he kept it around 74%. And so in the wake of that election, which obviously had significant concerns in terms of how it was run, the fact that the chief opposition to him was legally barred from running made it a little bit ridiculous. The question then became, would various world leaders call him and congratulate him, which is the sort of thing that happens typically, and a number of world leaders did. Would Donald Trump? Well, here he is to talk about it.
I had a call with President Putin and congratulated him on the victory, his electoral victory. The call had to do also with the fact that we will probably get together in the not too distant future so that we can discuss arms, we can discuss the arms race.
I want to return to that arms race thing because I wasn't aware that we were in the middle of an arms race right now, but apparently we are. So he did in fact call him, and we found out later on that he was specifically told not to. We're going to turn to that just a little bit later on. But some Republicans had an issue with him calling to congratulate this authoritarian leader for what is effectively a sham election. John McCain said an American president does not lead the free world by congratulating dictators on winning sham elections. And Chuck Grassley, head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, said, I think Putin is a criminal. What he did in Georgia, what he did in Ukraine, what he did in Baltic, what he's done in London, poisoning people with active nerve gas, that's a criminal act. I wouldn't have a conversation with a criminal. Sarah Huckabee Sanders was actually asked about this at a press conference, and she said, we're focused on our elections. We don't get to dictate how other countries operate, which is both a big change of stance for America historically. But even recently, I hadn't actually known this, but last summer, the White House slapped sanctions on what it called the illegitimate Venezuelan government after President Nicolas Maduro tried to bypass the legislature to rewrite the nation's constitution. It's probably justified. The Trump administration also announced last month that it would cut aid to Cambodia, citing deep concern about restrictions on democracy there, which are likely acts worthy of praise from the Trump administration. But there are limits on how they'll interfere. So what do you think?
Well, we got a couple of late breaking things that happened. Some of the Siberian counties came in. It's now up to 77%. Okay, in all seriousness, the final results at a preposterous 77%, partly because there's he did not allow his main opposition to run against him, which is convenient, but not quite what you do in a democracy. I'll get back to that in a second. And Congressman Senator Classy Ben Sassy just spoke out right before the show. I know it's sass, but it's more fun the other way. And he was very harsh. He gave 6 minutes of remarks on a Senate floor speech, and he said that Trump was, quote, very foolhardy to have done this. He said Vladimir Putin is not a friend. Vladimir Putin is a despot. The president of the United States was wrong to congratulate him. We were weakened as a nation, and a tyrant was strengthened. And the call was terribly ill-advised. So some very strong words from other Republicans that are in office. Now, where do we come out on this? Well, first of all, I can't believe I'm about to say this, and I know, John, you have a firm stance not to be fair to Trump, okay? But to be fair to Trump, as you pointed out, other leaders also called Putin, Germany, Japan, Israel, called to congratulate him. And, you know,
Germany.
Israel's massively right wing, but Japan and Germany, I mean, there's, okay. And by the way, another world leader that had called Putin after his last election was Barack Obama. Obama did in 2012. Now, this election was particularly loathsome, but I said at the time that the 2012 election was a sham. It's obviously a sham. When people talk about the stuff around the edges, it drives me crazy. So in this case, there was ballot box stuffing according to international observers. Poll watchers were blocked from carrying out their duties. But to me, that's just the appetizers. The main event is he won't let people run against him. The leading opposition figure is Alexei Navalny. Sorry for the terrible pronunciation, Navalny. He had him arrested on total nonsense charges and said, well, now you're a criminal and I guess you can't run against me. What a lucky break I just caught. Yeah. So it's I don't want to entertain any talk of, well, did all of Putin's political opponents, top political opponents throughout all these decades, were they all criminals? That they all happened to be arrested before the election so they would be disqualified from the elections?
That's not fair. Some mysteriously die.
Okay, yeah, so these are not, dude, 77%. That's not a real election. None of this is real. It's Hussein-like. And so I'm not entertaining any of this. So look, I don't think Trump calling is that big a deal. Look,
I don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, so sham elections, unfortunately, all across the world. Anyway, I don't want to get into ours, right? But I will in a second. So, but we got to do diplomacy. So if he calls people, I get it. He didn't need to go over the top and congratulate him. Like, oh, well, I do declare, Mr. Vladimir, very good, sir, very good. Congratulations on your election, right? You can just call and be like, okay, I guess you're still the president for the 18th time in a row.
Yeah.
Lucky break for you. Anyway, let's go on. If we're gonna have a summit, let's have a summit. And we'll go on with our lives.
Yeah.
But there is something curious, and then that leads to finally the Sarah Huckabee Sanders lie. So we don't like to meddle in other people's elections. Well, you can break this apart in a couple of ways. One, they seem to like to meddle in ours. Okay, and it's not like we meddled in their election, but it's okay to say, hey, next time, could you have a real one? Okay, which leads to the much more important point, which is we tell people that all the time. We just did it in Venezuela. We just did it in Cambodia. So, in fact, we're thinking of doing sanctions and arguing for sanctions. I think it's this week that Mike Pence is arguing for sanctions of Venezuela because he didn't like their elections. What happened to we don't meddle in other people's elections and whatever's the result is the result and we don't question it? That is demonstrably false, preposterously false, let alone all the coups and et cetera that we did in the past. But right now, we tell people that is an unacceptable election. We will do economic sanctions on you for that unacceptable election. And then Putin puts on a clown show and Trump's like, a circus? Great, and calls to congratulate him on his 3-ring circus.
Yeah, look, in terms of the caring about how other elections work, I think it's a tragedy that Russians don't get to have an actual democracy. I think that anyone, even to the extent that our system is continually manipulated in 100 different structural ways, is a tragedy. Everybody should get to have their desires translate into government action. I believe in standing up for progressive values, not only here in the US, but also abroad, and that includes Russia. In terms of the call, I don't care. Maybe I've just been so battered down by the news over the past couple of years that I don't have any caring left in me. Certainly, if the general topic is something Trump is doing and it has to do with Russia, this is pretty far down on my list of things that I actually care about. The only thing that makes me vaguely interested right now is the timing of it. I mean, I guess, yes, it does have to come after the election, so that makes sense. But I mean, they did just assassinate someone with a nerve agent they released inside of the UK like a week ago. That seems kind of relevant. And we did just find out last week that Russian government hackers hacked into our power grid, our air traffic control, our nuclear power systems, and all of this so that they could install the capability to theoretically turn it on or off whenever they want. That seems important. I don't know a lot about the energy sector necessarily, but they just did that. I don't know, in the wake of those two things, now I know in 2018, you're not allowed to care about those things because it has to do with Russia, so you're supposed to pretend that none of it matters. And if you do care about it, you probably want nuclear war with Russia, even though you don't, and you're explicitly anti-war. But those things did just happen. And so timing wise, maybe he could have held off. Maybe he could have slid into his DMs or something so that it wasn't as explicit. But overall, the call, lots of other people are doing it. I'm not gonna get down on Trump just because he had a call.
Yeah, so I think that we're allowed to be rational. And I believe the rational middle ground is not whether some of the Republican and Democratic senators are, why didn't you call Putin and punch him in the face and then split his throat while you were on the phone with him and have him bleed out in those 2.5 minutes, right?
What would be the point?
Yeah, okay, all right. Or, oh no, it's okay. You give him you hug it out. Like, hey, way to murder that person with a nerve agent in the middle of the UK. Oh, great job, congratulations, big guy. I think it's fair to ask for something in the middle. Like we can do diplomacy while not congratulating an obvious tyrant who runs these ridiculous. You know who's most hurt by those Russian non-elections? Is the Russian people. They've been robbed of their democracy. Out in the open, it's brazen. So he destroyed their democracy. As progressives, we should be furious about that. But that doesn't mean that we should be stupid about it and demand war or some sort of more actions that lead to further conflict. Now, I don't know what the hell Trump's talking about with this summit to stop the arms race. What arms race? And my guess is what he's doing is, oh, no, I'm being nice to Putin, not because I'm in his back pocket. No, not at all. It's because I want to do diplomacy. Yeah, that's it, diplomacy. You know me, I'm very diplomatic.
Well,
and some people believe it. Some people believe, no, Trump wants peace and he wants diplomacy. Hey, okay, we're looking at the same guy, right? No, he's not at all belligerent. Trump being belligerent, no. He's belligerent against everyone. Jake Tapper today made a good point. He's like, Trump has been more belligerent towards Jake Tapper and Don Lemon than he has to Vladimir Putin.
Let alone Chuck Todd, that sleepy-eyed son of a bee.
Yeah, I don't need or want him to be belligerent to Putin. And if we're gonna lower nuclear weapons, that would be amazing. Although Trump has said he wants to do 10x of the nuclear weapons we have. Make up your mind. But look, guys, the bottom line is it's obvious that he is never, ever gonna criticize Putin. And there is a reason for that. He criticizes everyone else on the planet, including his closest allies. And he will viciously attack anyone that crosses him for a second. But when it comes to Vlad, he's, congratulations, Vlad. So why the Beta Act? You know why, okay? So, but if you are still pretending that, no, Trump's treating Putin like everyone else, you're on a different planet, dude. Just wake up and realize it. Just raise your hand and go, okay, I can't see straight. To me, it seems like he's treating Putin just like everyone else. Okay, fine, you live with that, but that is nowhere near true.
The one area I disagree with you on is that he also treats Duterte pretty well. He doesn't like Kim Jong-un, to be fair. There is a tyrant he will attack, but there's some other tyrants that he's been very easy on in recent history. Okay, you said that they're saying that we should be furious, but I don't know about that. But I do know one person who is furious. Donald Trump is furious about a leak having to do with his call with Vladimir Putin. Trump was reportedly fuming on Tuesday night after the Washington Post reported that Trump's national security advisors specifically instructed him not to congratulate Putin on his electoral victory. They were subtle, to be fair. They put in all caps, "Do not congratulate." And so that was leaked. And what's interesting about that is that apparently there's a very narrow circle of people who might have leaked it. Those documents are not widely distributed. Apparently it might actually have been a crime to leak those particular documents. But it's out there now, and he's not happy about it. He's not happy about the fact that he might have done a bad thing. He's just mad that we found out about it. And specifically that he was instructed not to congratulate him in, I would say, sort of childish terms.
Yeah, and so I have perhaps a unique take on this. First of all, I don't think they should have leaked it. I'm uncomfortable with the national security leaks. So it's one thing that when they're doing internal White House drama and Ivanka's leaking against John Kelly and John Kelly's leaking against Jared Kushner, I don't care. That's all fun and games. And they're giving dirt about each other. Well, though that dirt is true, it's amusing, it's dangerous for the country. I understand all that. But you should always think, what if the shoe was on the other foot? So would you, if Bernie Sanders was president, would you like people in the national security team leaking memos to him?
No.
So yeah, so that's unacceptable, and they got to stop doing that. Now, on the other hand, now that we know, is it embarrassing that they have to bold things for our president? Hey, third grader, this is in bold like your tweets. Do not congratulate, that is not the official American position. And there's two reasons for that. One, he's stupid and they know he's stupid and they know he's a child. Number two, they know that he's in the back pocket of Putin and he's gonna congratulate him. And they're like, do not set American policy, no other part of the government agrees, right? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll take that under advisement, but do you have tapes on me? Did I do money laundering with you? No. Oh, congratulations, Vladimir, what a wonderful election you had. I can't believe you got 137% of the vote. I think that is a great idea. I stole that tweet from John.
And also, it's amazing the stuff that you think about, you see it, it's news, and then you forget about it like a week ago. Like, wasn't it just like a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, where he was talking about how, was it Xi Jinping that had set himself up as president for life? Maybe we should look into that. I mean, maybe it's just that he likes the idea that people are calling the shots in their own elections. Maybe it's sort of a general thing like that. Like if you can effectively make the elections just like a rubber stamp on your presidency, that's certainly convenient. Well, and maybe set up like, an heir later on, like a son, not Eric, but maybe one of the other ones, maybe Ivanka.
So there's two layers to this. One, of course he was gonna congratulate Putin because that's all he's ever done. He's the one guy that Trump acts with kids' gloves towards. But the second layer to it is, you're absolutely right, John. He loves authoritarian leaders. Duterte, great. The Chinese leader, oh, you get to be president for life. Oh, I like that. Just kidding, kind of, but not really. I was kidding when I said I like how Duterte is killing drug dealers, and then I wasn't kidding, and I made it official policy of my administration. So, and does he like how Vladimir rules with an iron fist and everyone must be loyal to him? Yeah, I mean, he insists on loyalty over and over. He doesn't even understand our form of government. He was genuinely confused why the FBI director would not pledge his loyalty to him instead of the Constitution.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in democracy, doesn't believe in the Constitution. He thinks, oh, I'm the president, so you should be loyal to me. And we should end this stupid thing called elections and the law, rule of law. Why do we have prosecutors investigating the president? I'm already the president. Can't I do whatever I want? No, that's not how a democracy works, and you kind of hate that, and it's obvious. And that's why he's got all those Republican betas that follow him, the right, alt-right, and the right wing. They love being cucked by him, and so they're like, oh my God, an authoritative leader, and we lose our democracy and all free choice. I didn't want choice anyway. I pledge loyalty to you, Donald Trump, and everything you ever do. Because that's in their nature. They have a large amygdala. They're afraid of everything. And so when a so-called strong leader or an alpha comes by, they can't wait to be betas. And so that's the situation we have here. The only thing that I'm a little surprised with is that they're not a little bothered that Trump is a beta to Putin's alpha. Except for the fact that now in the alt-right and in a lot of the right wing, you're starting to see like this reverence for Putin, the strongest of the strong leaders. These guys who used to tell us to attack Russia all the time. Now they're like, oh, they're more authoritative and more dictatorial. Well, I love that. That means I don't have to think for myself anymore. I give you everything I have. You do whatever you want with it.
Maybe it's just like a personal thing. Like they used to want to have a beer with George W. Bush. Now they want a president they can be a cuck with. He's just like us.
Yeah, oh, right. Cucks of a feather.
I don't know. I honestly don't even like saying that term ironically.
Yeah.
I despise it so much.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, why don't we take our second break? Because we've got death penalty for drugs, and then we have another unarmed person being killed by the police.
Yeah, the second story is absolutely tragic, but I thought that he was just kidding with the oh, he's not kidding.
No, it's policy.
Interesting. All right, we'll talk about that when we come back. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and John with you. I'm going to read YouTube super chats first. Kimberly Buckley says, happy birthday, Cenk. TYT strong. Thank you. Appreciate it. Midwest Win says, give everyone bombs. There'll be less bombings. Huh. Well, that is the logic of people who are in favor of gun rights. Clip Culture says, happy birthday, Cenk, and big love from Quebec, the actual most progressive state in North America. Peter Hamby says, happy birthday, Cenk. I just called myself Cenk, by the way.
It's difficult.
Well, I am notorious for mispronouncing names, so I've just mispronounced my own. Anyway, happy birthday, Cenk, from the border of Neenah, Menasha, Wisconsin. I bet his wish is the 25th Amendment to be filed against Trump. Well, pretty close, Peter, but if I was going to wish for an amendment, it would certainly be for the 28th Amendment to get money out of politics. Stephanie Guy says, happy birthday, Cenk, much love from Ontario. Part of the reason I read all those is we got a lot of northern love today.
Yeah, way past the wall.
Yeah, we appreciate it, guys. I would let you in to this side of the wall. I think we need all the help we can get.
And then TOT staff would stab him later on. That's a spoiler.
Yeah, the Stu says, I wonder if Trump will congratulate Maduro when he quote unquote wins his election. Yeah. Now, mind you, sometimes Venezuela is connected to Russia, so if that's the case, he might. But no, I looked into it. Actually, Pence is seeking sanctions against Venezuela because we have oil beef with them, of course. That's one of our issues. And plus, Maduro looks to be a terrible guy who's fixing the elections. Anyway, he is arguing for those sanctions today. So while we say we don't meddle in anybody else's elections.
Yeah. My only other thought, and I'll keep it brief on the Russia thing. Basically, everything I've read, Putin's popular in Russia. Like even young Russians, they like him. Just have an election.
I know,
but they like the strongman thing, and they've grown up with no faith in democracy. Like you could probably just win an election.
He could probably win it with 54 or 56%.
Yeah,
but he don't want to do that. A guy like that doesn't take any chance. What if he loses? He's not going to do that. Anyway, you could fix it afterwards. Anyway,
they'll just be stuck with some other oligarch, probably, just like us.
But I think part of the point is for him to dispirit his opponents. Like, I'm fixing the election and it's super obvious and there's nothing you can do about it. I think that's part of it. We don't think like dictators, that's our problem.
I try.
All right, one last one here. Carrie G says, translating what Sarah Huckabee Sanders said, we don't tell Putin what to do, he tells us. And by the way, Carrie G, I think, wrote this before I said it. Trump is King Cuck where Russia is concerned. That is an unfortunate phrase, but King Cuck indeed.
I would like to propose that once Trump is finally not president anymore, I'm assuming that we will reban him from the show. Maybe I'm assuming too much. But if we do that, we should also ban Cuck.
No, you know, before the alt-right stole the term, if you were a longtime Young Turks viewer, you'll know that I actually thought cuckold was one of the funniest terms in the English language. I thought it was hilarious.
I'm okay with cuckold. Cuck annoys me.
Okay, I hear you.
Stop trying to make Shakespeare cool. Anyway,
all right.
Okay, let's move on to a very important story. We have just moved one step closer to the government killing drug dealers here in the United States because Attorney General Jeff Sessions has released a memo encouraging capital punishment charges for what I would term an oddly expansive list of drug-related offenses. We're not gonna show you the whole memo because it's long, but I do wanna show you two excerpts for two different reasons. Here's the first. The important part is at the bottom. We want the ability to seek capital punishment for certain drug-related crimes. This is going out to the people who will be doing that. Among these drug-related crimes, certain racketeering activities, which theoretically is non-violent. The use of a firearm resulting in death during a drug trafficking crime, that you're talking about murder. Murder in furtherance of a continuing criminal enterprise, there you're talking about murder. And dealing in extremely large quantities of drugs. The articles that I read all said extremely large quantities of drugs. And I was sure that when I read the actual memo, it would be more specific. And it would say fentanyl or something else that's almost necessarily deadly in its use, certainly in large quantities. But no, the actual memo just says large quantities of drugs. There is every reason to believe that that could be used as the pretext to charge people with with capital punishment, with the death penalty for dealing marijuana, if it's extremely large quantities, which is a highly technical scientific term. That is a horrifying piece of this memo, and I feel like most of the people in the news who are even discussing this are not focusing enough on that component of it.
Yeah, so I want to give a fact here and then a little bit of amusing conspiratorial, or perhaps not so amusing, conspiratorial speculation. The fact is that it is unconstitutional to give the death penalty to anything that doesn't, to any crime that doesn't lead in death. So that is a long Supreme Court precedent, there's no question about it. So this proposal is unconstitutional from day one, not close, not remotely close, which is what leads to my speculation. So there are actually two other parts of the memo that are good. They talk about reducing the demand and overprescription of opioids. Well, that's good, and boosting access to treatment, and that's good. So the conspiratorial part is, are they putting something obviously unconstitutional in the proposal so that the whole thing is ruled unconstitutional and they go, oh golly gee, I guess we can't reduce the opioids. All right, pharmaceutical companies, what can we do? I mean, you are a huge donor to us, but what a lucky break for you guys that we happen to put a poison pill, if you will, into this legislation that we knew it would get declared unconstitutional. Oops.
I hope that that's not it. That seems like too clever for them by half.
Well, that's a good point
but
too.
You could be right. But as of right now, it's in there. And you're right, I have a little bit more on some of the good stuff, but one other part I wanted to focus on, the problem I have with it isn't just that they want to go around murdering drug dealers for increasingly vague reasons, but that they fundamentally don't understand what this problem is about. So they acknowledge overprescription, so they understand that doctors are involved in this and pharmaceutical companies are involved in this, but they also have this section in the memo. Drug traffickers, transnational criminal organizations, and violent street gangs all contribute substantially to this scourge. To combat this deadly epidemic, federal prosecutors, blah, 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 it leads into those charges. Yes, some of the people who become addicted to opioids will then transition over to things like heroin, which because they're illegal, necessarily involve criminal gangs, blah, 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 all that stuff. But the fundamental problem there is still their avenue with which they got to heroin and other sorts of drugs. And that was legally prescribed drugs. There is some component of drug traffickers, in the illegal sense and that sort of thing, but that is not the core of the problem. And the worst hit states, by the way, you're talking about West Virginia and some of the other areas around there, these are not areas with huge urban gangs. This is people who are buying fully legal prescription drugs and becoming addicted to them, and then having the obvious consequences. And so I think this is a giant red herring.
So 2/3 of the opioid deaths are from people taking legal opioids, not illegal. Only 1/3 is from illegal drugs. So if you want to execute the top drug dealers in the country, it is literal that you would have to execute the CEOs of the pharmaceutical companies. Now, I'm not in favor of that. I think that's crazy talk. I think it's crazy talk any way you slice it. But the largest drug dealers that lead to the most amount of deaths from opioid addiction are legal chief executive officers of pharmaceutical companies. I did an interview on Rebel headquarters with someone who's on the medical cannabis board in West Virginia. And he explained there's a town in West Virginia that has about 3,000 people in it. And I forget the exact numbers now, but it was something along the lines of 20 million prescriptions were given to that town over a small period of time. Now, do you think the pharmaceutical companies didn't know that town only had 3,000 people? Oh golly gee, I thought it was New York City. Is it this little town in West Virginia? No, they knew what they were doing. They knew they were making a profit off of the opioid addiction. They are literally drug dealers.
Dealing, what was the exact term? Extremely large quantities of drugs.
It fits the definition.
Like a lot.
My guess is that the Republicans are not going to execute some of their top donors. And the pharmaceutical companies are the #1 donors to politicians in this country. Yeah. More than oil lobbyists, more than bankers, they're #1. That's why they are immune from all this. And that's why Donald Trump is trying to distract you. He said he would completely wipe out the opioid addiction. He would stop cold under President Trump. It has, of course, gone up recently. And the reality is he wants you to look at MS-13 and the other street gangs because it's easy to demagogue on those. He wants you to make sure that you're not focusing on the real problem, which is legal opioids.
Yeah. Okay, let's turn to something completely different. A 22-year-old African-American man named Stephon Clark was shot and killed by Sacramento police in his own backyard late Sunday night. And you will be shocked to find out that he was unarmed when he was shot and killed. The police department said that officers were responding to a report that someone was breaking car windows nearby. So that's the initiating criminal activity that they're looking for. So keep that in mind. Deputies in a Sacramento County Sheriff's Department helicopter spotted Clark in a backyard and told deputies that he had shattered a window with a toolbar. Police approached Clark, who they initially believed was armed with a gun. Police said Clark held an object that he extended in front of him as he approached two officers, again, in his backyard. The officers believe the suspect was pointing a firearm at them. Fearing for their safety, the officers fired their duty weapons, striking the suspect multiple times. And the spokesperson for the department said that each of the two officers fired 10 shots, a total of 20 shots. They couldn't even say at that point how many times Clark had been hit. And police said Monday that the only item they found near his body was a cell phone. They believe it was an iPhone. And they thought it was either a crowbar or a gun.
Okay, so but just in case they shot and killed him. And that's the heart of the problem with this story. So there's a couple of layers. First layer is some parts of the story don't make any sense. So he's living with his grandmother at this apartment. They shoot and kill him in his grandmother's backyard, his home that he's been living in, his own backyard they kill him in. Why did he have to go to his neighbor, in this case it's Bill Wong, 88 years old, and he said he didn't hear his window being shattered or anything, right? But okay, he's 88, maybe he didn't hear it. Why go to his neighbor's house, shatter a window for no reason, and then jump the fence and go to his own backyard? Or maybe he was just in his own backyard.
Yeah.
And they saw a black man in his own backyard with something in his hand, and they're like, well, that must be a weapon, let's go shoot him.
Yeah.
Okay, now, I don't know that that's the case. And everybody, they're gonna release a video at some point. They did have cameras on them, which is a great new development, and we'll find out. And it might be that which brings me to layer two, and I'll get to the caveat in a second. Immediately afterwards, after a shooting, what do unfortunately a lot of police departments throughout the country do? They smear the victim, right? So now all sorts of things are in the press because the cops say, we were chasing down a guy. They were chasing down a guy. Some guy was actually breaking windows, apparently, right? I believe that part. There's no reason to lie about that. I don't like. They're not spotting random dudes in their backyard, but let's go murder that guy, right? So they were chasing someone. They thought, right? But then they say, oh, well, did you know about his prior criminal record? So then they go back to 2008 for a charge there. They go back to 2013 for possession of a firearm, which I think every right winger in the country has, but it's a violation though in California, et cetera. Possession of a controlled substance. I don't know if it was marijuana, 90% of the country does that. But we got to put all that stuff out there. Remember, the guy's a guilty guy. Did he do this? No, apparently not. I mean, he just had a cell phone. He wasn't trying to kill cops. But I'm going to bring back all those things. But the reason I bring that up is the one that really stuck out at me is they mentioned that in the driveway was a black SUV and a gold Cadillac. Why bring that up? Why give that to the press? Seems like, yeah, but where did he get the money for those kind of cars? Why was that in his driveway? Or you already killed a guy. You don't need to rub it in. So, okay, let's take the cops' best case scenario and say they really were chasing a guy, and this is possible, and it was him, and he did break the neighbor's window for whatever reason, and then he jumped into his own backyard. And then they decided to fire 20 shots at him and kill him. Okay, even in that best case scenario, this is a terrible shooting and totally unjustified. See, what we're asking you to do is to value the life of the citizens. So when you're not sure that it's a gun, you're not remotely close to sure that it's a gun, and you're chasing someone over a broken window, your first instinct should not be, let's murder him. Okay, you don't like to use the word murder. Let's not kill him, execute him, whatever word you'd like to use, but he's dead. Because you were worried about his iPhone because he had broken a window, so you took his life. If you can't see why people are upset about that, then you're not trying very hard because you don't really care about the citizens. You think, I don't care, man. It could have been what they called it, a toolbar. What was he gonna do with a toolbar? What was he gonna throw it at you? And you might have gotten your pinky hurt, or God, it might have hit your leg and it might have given you a Charlie horse. At toolbar, you executed someone because you thought he might have had a toolbar.
Well, yeah, and you had gun. I mean, look, Larry Krasner recently got in a lot of trouble because he wanted the Philadelphia police to not shoot center mass and shoot to kill. They fired 20 shots. If they'd shot him in the leg 20 times, he would have died. So they could have tried to, if they thought he had a hand weapon, they could have tried to incapacitate him. I mean, the problem is that, as you point out, like the initiating crime is broken windows, but they go into the situation thinking this is a life or death situation because of the sort of person they think it's going to be and the situation it's going to be in. And when they rush into that backyard and they think they see a gun, so they fire 20 shots, I can't help but think of the tests that show that in simulations, they're quicker to pull the trigger when the person that flashes on the screen during these tests is black rather than white. And they're more likely to make a mistake that a person who's unarmed, they think has a weapon when it's a bagel or something, when the person in the simulation is black rather than white. That sort of thing is not just some academic thing that elites like to do, and it's, hey, it's fun, we did this test in a university. It plays out in the real world when people rush into someone's backyard and it's dark and they think they see a weapon, but they really don't. Those sorts of biases, they result in people dying that didn't need to die. And one other thing I want to say, while apparently it's true that he had a caddy in his driveway, it's also true that he had 2 sons. He was a stay-at-home father. They were 1 and 3 years old. And according to his family, he had a fondness for sneakers, football, and video games. All of those things are true about his past too. Those things just might not have been on the cop's mind at the particular time.
So we just did a story yesterday about a huge study that shows that black and white men from the same socioeconomic background, when they start out as kids in the same financial background, black boys grow up to be black men in a worse economic situation. Part of the reason is they get incarcerated at a far greater rate. And so are there assumptions that cops are making about how dangerous black guys are? I mean, again, you have to be purposely blind not to see it. It happens in case after case. Not only do you have overwhelming anecdotal evidences, the cases that we cover in all the stories, but you have statistics to back it up, endless statistics to back it up. And yet people go, nope, nope, nope. I mean, and by the way, toolbar is in the police report. I assume they're referring to a crowbar, but you got people going, I mean, you got a black guy with maybe an iPhone and maybe a crowbar. Well, of course you have to kill him. I mean, he's black. And they might say, no, no, no. If it was a white guy and is sitting in his backyard with a toolbar, as they described it, really you're gonna go kill every white guy using tools in his backyard? Even if there was a robber in the area and they say, oh, a helicopter spots a white guy with tools in his backyard, let's go shoot him 20 times. Really, that you think that's what's happening in America? Look, I can't help you if that's what you think. The reality is African Americans are enraged and should be enraged about how police in large, not in every place, not in every cop, but overall in America, how they are treated. And you got now a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old without a dad because the cops are trained to fear black males and be so afraid that they shoot almost no matter what. It might or might not be a tool, so let's execute him just in case. That's a sick system, not based on justice, but steeped in injustice.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we're a little past time, but I really want to do the Pennsylvania story as quickly as we can.
Okay, let's do that then. The people of Pennsylvania have effectively had their political representation stolen from them for the last handful of elections, thanks to a particularly insanely gerrymandered map in that state. Now, in the past, Republicans have consistently won 13 out of 18 House seats, despite getting half of the votes. I'm not great at math, but 13 out of 18 is not about half, it's not even close. After the court's ruling, which the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled on this gerrymandered map after a challenge, the map was redrawn by a nonpartisan expert, and that created 4 swing districts 8 in favor of the Republicans, 6 in favor of the Democrats. Still a slight lean in favor of the Republicans, but that's not good enough when you've been getting 13 out of 18. And so the Republicans have been challenging that new map, which is set to go into effect later on this year in the midterms. They didn't want that to happen, so they challenged it. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, thank you, but no, we're gonna leave this map in place. And so what are they gonna do? They're gonna take out the judges. Representative Chris Dush has introduced resolutions to impeach Justices Doherty, Donahue, McCloskey Todd, Wecht, and they're also going to be going for Justice Max Baer, accusing them of misbehavior in office. Because if the judges rule against you, you get rid of the Supreme Court effectively.
Okay, so 2 parts of this. One is that this is what dictators do. You're worried that someone is going to get into government using democracy, Adolf Hitler. And then once they are in power, they go, well, thanks for playing, just kidding. We're not gonna have democracy anymore. By the way, there's countries like Russia and some would argue Turkey, where people got into power, authoritative leaders got into power, and they were like, oh, that was cute with what you did with democracy. We're done with that. So Putin ends local governments in the beginning and slowly entrenches more and more power, and then he makes it basically anyone who's running against him, he puts in prison. Erdogan in Turkey, oh, does the prime minister have all the power? Well, I'd like to be president, so I'm gonna change the constitution completely. So the president has all the power and the parliament has almost no power. Oh, well, there goes your democracy, sad day for you, right? And so these right-wing authoritarian dictator wannabes in Pennsylvania come in and go, well, I didn't like that the state was 50-50. So I drew the map in a way that I was gonna get 13 out of 18. Who gives a damn about your stupid democracy and the vote, one man, one vote? I never cared. And the judges go, well, that's unconstitutional, and it's our role in a democracy to make that decision. Oh, well, then I'm gonna destroy your careers, I'm gonna throw you out, and I'm gonna go back to the system where I'm in charge, even though I don't deserve it. Because you made the mistake of electing a Republican.
Yeah.
So once we're in power, we're gonna use every dirty trick in the book to maintain that power, and we don't give a damn about your constitution, we don't give a damn about your democracy. Beware of ever voting for a Republican, because the minute that you do, they go, thanks a lot for that democracy, idiot. We told you, we're authoritarian by nature, and this is an amazing case of it. They don't believe in our system of government. When the court says, and the Supreme Court rejected the Republican appeal. They said, the deeply right-wing Supreme Court rejected the appeal and said, yes, this is a state matter, the state court gets to decide. And they go, Pennsylvania Constitution, yeah, democracy, who cares? I am in charge right now. You made a mistake, you put me in charge. I'm gonna destroy your democracy in Pennsylvania. That's what they're trying to do here. You should punish them. Every one of those Republicans that tries to get rid of these judges should be thrown out of office. Then why don't you, look, I'm not telling you not to be conservative. There are liberals, there are conservatives. We're not gonna change everybody's mind overnight. But can you vote for people who are not this deeply antithetical to our system of government and this deeply corrupt? Because if you do, the next time you vote, it might be the last.
Yeah, I know some people think that fears of what's happening with our democracy could be overblown or whatever, that could be manipulated, but there is a significant portion of this country that is openly defiant against democracy, doesn't think it's actually the system we should have. Recent polls have put it at somewhere between 20 and 25% of Trump voters say, democracy, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, maybe something could actually be better. And I don't think that number is going down. I think that we do have to be concerned about this. I don't know why as a country we don't take our election security and our voting rights more seriously. It's like the 75th issue, if at all, that gets discussed, certainly that gets anything done about it. But we need to prioritize it. We need to prioritize whether we actually can vote, whether we're being blocked from that, either by law or by access, that they take all the polling places out of your area because, hey, you live in a poor area, so screw you. Or whether they make it so that you can't vote because you gotta work 3 jobs, and for some reason, we have a million holidays in this country, but we don't have a holiday for democracy for some reason. We have to be worried about the fact that what our vote actually will be could be manipulated in a variety of different ways, and we certainly need to worry about whether our vote will actually count for something. Because you can get get through those first 2 hurdles, but if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter. You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy. But we don't prioritize those things. We don't do anything about those things.
So impeachment is supposed to be for, generally speaking, high crimes and misdemeanors. The last time Pennsylvania impeached a justice was back in 1994, and that's because he was found guilty of a felony. Now, the Republicans are saying, I don't care about your stinking laws. I don't care that impeachment is for crimes. They made the crime of disagreeing with a Republican. So we're gonna end their careers anyway, and we're gonna put in our sham justices who are gonna rule our way no matter what. And we have an uneven playing field in America. Are the Democrats corrupted? Yes, the whole system is corrupt. They allow for private financing. They all serve their donors. I know that. But the Republicans are paid to be viciously right-wing by those donors who want endless tax cuts. And the Democrats are paid to lose. So what that creates is an uneven playing field where Republicans will grab power by any means necessary. And the Democrats will never fight back because that's what they're paid to do. They're paid to lay down. So you have a situation, would a Democratic assembly or Senate and the state level ever considering firing every Republican judge, impeaching every Republican judge, even though they have no grounds for it at all? Just brazen political act. I'm going to destroy democracy. I don't give a, here, I'm going to light your Constitution on fire. You know it. If you're a Republican, you'll agree with me because you'll say, of course, the Democrats are too weak. They would never do that, right? And in the rare cases that they are for gerrymandering, by the way, in states like Maryland, we're dead set against that. We fight the Democrats who want to gerrymander Maryland or any other state, okay? But overall, the Democrats do almost none of this stuff, especially not anything this egregious. And the Republicans think, you mistook my intentions. My intention is not to be your representative. It is to be your ruler. And I will do it by any means necessary. And this is what this is. All right, we gotta go. When we come back, thank you, John. When we come back, Facebook is in a world of trouble. Mark Zuckerberg finally speaks out about Cambridge Analytica and the breach. But that story has a ton of nuance, guys. They've done some bad things, Facebook has. But they also have enemies that you might not be aware of. And so some of the actions taken against Facebook has an ulterior motive. I want to explain that when we return.
T-minus 1 minute till landing. TYT broadcast controllers, listen up. Give me a go, no go for landing. Sound?
Audio is hovering at minus 12 decibels. We're a go.
Streaming?
We're go.
Camera crew?
We're a go.
Mission control?
We're go.
Snacks?
We're good.
Iguana?
Sir, we are go for landing.
Okay, everybody. I want this to go off without a hitch.
Sir? I've been looking over this joke for the past hour, and with the Bannon firing now weeks old and waiting in
English, Johnson, English. What are you trying to tell me?
This joke isn't going to land, sir.
Okay, everyone. Forget the old plan. From this moment on, we're improvising a new joke.
So this is where the show started, and this is where it was supposed to end. Now the joke was supposed to land here, but that's not gonna happen, obviously. So we need to come up with a new joke. Maybe here?
Hits are dropping, streams are failing, retweets are stopping.
40 seconds.
All right, team. We gotta find a way to make this fit into a joke about this that will appeal to them.
30 seconds.
The Trump joke's our safest option. Trying to land a Trump joke after this week's events is a suicide mission.
We are officially out of time. We need to act now.
Sir, I think our best course of action is to let Jink try to land a dad joke.
That's the deal?
That's the deal.
All right, everyone, to their stations.
Germany, and some of the creditor nations like
Cameras, position, social media team.
Race run follows.
10 seconds.
As for the rest of us, all any of us can do now is wait and hope.
This is gonna be the worst disaster TYT has ever experienced.
With all due respect, sir, I think this will be the finest hour 2 yet.
Giving mood. Angela Merkel's government seems to have signaled pronounced.
Come on, Jake.
Everyone, it's been a pleasure streaming with you.
Greek Prime Minister immediately picked up the phone to Putin and said, "You Putin any money in?" Okay, anyway.
TYT crew, the joke has landed.
Young Turks. Brett Ehrlich's here, everybody, playing air guitar. Okay.
The bass. This is bass.
Oh, that's bass.
Whenever anyone's elbow goes up, that means they're like want you to know that they know how to play bass.
Okay. I am not in the air community, so I don't do your cosplay. Okay. All right. More good wishes coming in. I'm reading this because I'm partly amused by all the different places that it's coming in from, and thank you guys. So YouTube super chat. Lizard Lilial writes in, "Happy birthday from Nova Scotia too. Love from Canada." Like we're littered with Canadian good wishes today. Thank you. Lars Nilsson writes in, "Many happy wishes, Cenk, from a progressive in Gothenburg." Wow. All right. Caranola writes in on YouTube Super Chat. When you use YouTube Super Chat, it helps the show too. "Happy birthday, Cenk. Many happy returns of the day. Thanks for all that you do for us. You're looking great. Keep on salading. See you here in Tokyo someday."
Yeah.
Well, look at all over the world. Thank you, guys. Now, you are unlikely to see me, although my wife might be going to Tokyo soon. The guy you're most likely to see in Tokyo is this guy.
Oh, I got this sweatshirt in Tokyo at Uniqlo.
Oh, you did?
And it came with matching sweats for like $19.
I feel like you go to Japan every other week.
Oh, I love it. I've been 5 times in 2 years. It's fantastic.
See, like you can't go on Brett Ehrlich's Instagram without getting bombarded with pictures of him in Japan.
Yeah, I read an article that was like, that's the most annoying thing on Instagram is people sharing their vacation photos. Horcher's there right now.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, and and the cherry blossoms are happening.
That's right. So Brett, of course, on Pop Trigger as well, and Kim Horcher is on Nerd Alert. Check those out. Last one, Lores writes in, "If 2 police officers who mistake a cell phone for a gun fire 20 bullets into a guy, what the hell is a teacher going to do with a gun in an active shooter situation?" Excellent point. That's right. Okay, there's so many more, but we got to get going on the show. Brett, take it away.
All right, Mark Zuckerberg hath spoken under his eye. Mark Zuckerberg is, the head of Facebook and founder. And in the wake of all of this, Cambridge Analytica, it wasn't exactly a data breach, it wasn't exactly a data hack. What actually happened? In the wake of it, it took 5 days before Mark Zuckerberg made a statement. People were calling for it. Amy Klobuchar and others, according to this graphic news. Senator John Kennedy and I just sent a bipartisan letter to Chuck Grassley asking for a judiciary hearing with social media CEOs, including Zuckerberg. This isn't the first time we've made this request, but now 50 million people who had their records stolen should add to our numbers. John Kennedy himself said the behavior from Facebook lately has been kind of getting into the foothills of creepy. He also wanted to know if we've been, Facebook is enabling us to live in some kind of weird Truman Show environment where they create our own reality for us. The UK has launched formal inquiries into this kind of data issue. The UK Information Commissioner Elizabeth Denham said she is producing a warrant to search Cambridge Analytica's servers after the firm missed a deadline to voluntarily cooperate. Even people who have been themselves absorbed into Facebook have been absorbed into weighing in on this. Brian Acton, the co-founder of WhatsApp, which was bought by Facebook for $19 billion in 2014, posted to Twitter, "It's time to delete Facebook." We are going to skip forward to graphic, I think it's 66, because Mark Zuckerberg, after 5 days and his company losing $50 billion in market capitalization, finally made his statement. He said, "We have a responsibility to protect your data, and if we can't, then we don't deserve to serve you. I've been working to understand exactly what happened and how to make sure this doesn't happen again. I started Facebook, and at the end of the day, I'm responsible for what happens on our platform. We will learn from this experience to secure our platform further and make our community safer for everyone going forward."
All right, couple of small points and then really the heart of the issue. First of all, I don't know, like it's not my business, but the Brian Acton speaking out against Facebook after he sold his app to them for $19 billion. I don't know, man. I'd have kept that one internal.
He no longer works for Facebook.
I know he doesn't, and I know he gets to say it, and I know that once they sell, they always leave the building as soon as they possibly can. And I know you already got your billions of dollars. He doesn't get the whole 19 billion. There's investors and stuff, but I'm sure he got plenty of money. Be cool,
yeah,
okay.
Right.
And maybe that's wrong. Maybe that he's principled for speaking out. It's a small point. Okay. And number two, I don't care about the timing issue. He took 5 days and posted an investigative story about how he liked some pretty pictures on Facebook.
Yeah.
So he must have been hiding in a cave. Look, man, they lost $50 billion in market cap. Zuckerberg himself lost $9 billion in his net worth. Now, it doesn't really matter. He still got 66 billion, but losing $9 billion, it's a bad week. It's a bad week for anyone.
How would you respond? Like, first of all, I don't even know how to wrap my mind around having the remaining dollars that he has, but I don't even know how you could function after losing $9 billion.
No, but again, if you started with 75 billion, it probably doesn't matter at all. Look, I've done the math on it. First of all, 40 million is an outrageous, monstrous number, okay? But I'm positive that anything beyond 40 million is really unnecessary.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you get to $1 billion, which is 960 million above 40 million, let alone 75 million. Anyway, so don't shed too many tears for him. But my point is that they're gonna take a little while to figure out what the right way to respond is. They've got investors suing them, they got users suing them, they're reeling right now, they've got everybody attacking them. They're gonna huddle with lawyers, they're gonna huddle with PR people. They're not gonna just go out there and give an earnest statement like, "Oh man, I saw what happened, and golly, gee, that sucks," right?
Also, if he was just like, "Oh God, I didn't know, I gotta get everything together," you know?
Yeah, this is a gigantic business with a ton of financial interests. They're gonna take their time to figure out what is the best strategy. So, and now on the flip side to that is so when they come out with statements of being incredibly contrite and that we are taking personal responsibility, etc. Mark Zuckerberg didn't go in there and go, "Hold on, let me type this thing out," right? Mm-hmm. It's PR people, and that was looked at 1,000 times over by 100 PR people. And that's okay, he runs a giant company, but understand where that's coming from. So it's not like he's like, "Oh man, no, personal responsibility, it's mine. I gotta own up to it, my bad," right? Yeah. No, that's what you're supposed to say to put people at ease and yada yada. I'm just keeping it real with you guys as to what's going on.
Yeah, I just don't know I've seen a lot of Mark Zuckerberg apologies, you know, because there are so many changes that they introduce to Facebook, and there are so many decisions that they make. I remember when they invented the feed. The feed, which is basically so far in the rearview mirror of Facebook, but it was the idea that instead of just going to your Facebook page and then going to someone else's Facebook page, they would take all the data that you're already sharing, compile it and put it in the Facebook feed. And that's what you scroll through. And when that happened back in 2006, Zuckerberg had to write an apology saying, "Wow, we really messed this one up." And I don't remember the exact words, but that was the beginning. And then he made that statement recently where he had to go and he's sitting there looking straight into camera in his work uniform, and behind him is like people going around the office. It's just so strange, and I don't know how accountable to hold these social media companies, and I don't know how accountable they're holding these other folks. Because when you look at Cambridge Analytica, they did access this data inappropriately by acquiring it from someone who wasn't supposed to sell it to them. But I don't know to what extent Facebook can turn around and say, you know what, we are gonna levy an appropriate punishment to people who did these inappropriate things.
So look, we are partners with Facebook. There's not a lot of money at stake there. I'm just telling you to be over the top, careful, and give you any kind of conflict of interest we might have. Now, having said that, I am going to be both more generous to Facebook than others are being, and I'm going to explain why, and more harsh to Facebook than you hear anywhere else. So let me explain what I think is the reality here. So were they, as some writer put it, aggressively disinterested? And I think that was the same HuffPost writer that I criticized a second ago. Were they aggressively disinterested in how their data was being mined? Probably. And the reason for that is they're making money. They're selling ads. So Cambridge Analytica was supposed to only had like a couple 100,000 people download the app, but somehow they got the information of 50 million users. So some are saying Facebook looked the other way to make more money. Now they'll have to investigate that. That is not proven. We'll see how that plays out. But is that a real issue? Yes, that's definitely a real issue, and one that they got to get on top of, and they can't let their greed get away from them. Now, on the other hand, it's important that you guys know some of the ulterior motives going on here. So the rest of the press is loving this because they despise Facebook. Now, why do they despise Facebook? Not having anything to do with Cambridge Analytica or the elections. It's because Facebook was unreal jerks to them. Okay, so how? They're like, come here, do instant articles. Put all your articles on Facebook and we'll reward you, and we'll put all your videos on Facebook and we'll reward you, and on and on and on. Everybody come to Facebook, we've got a wonderful little trap for you. Because one wonderful thing that's gonna give you more viewers. And everybody got hooked on Facebook, and then they changed the rules. And they did it over and over again. And it destroyed a lot of companies. It hurt a lot of those media companies tremendously. So they've been looking for payback for a long time. So the minute Facebook's in any kind of trouble, they got no allies left. And everybody jumps in for the kill. Facebook, Cambridge Analytica. So there's definitely schadenfreude here as they try to pounce and do the hashtag delete Facebook and push that on and on. I've got more, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just, my gut reaction to the Facebook stuff, because I know people who work there, and I don't think that anyone over there is like evil. I think it's very much like, hey, we're a tech company. We have all this information, what can we do with it? Well, I think more than what we can do with it, we can see what you guys can do with it. And that's how it's presented in those big original Facebook platform meetings. And they did that. And then, as much as they thought they knew what would come of it, that same entrepreneurial spirit that they were depending on to grow their product turned into this. People taking that spirit too far and making it turn into like an evil demon spirit that mines psychographic information by starting out asking you like little quiz questions.
Yeah, and so it's a lesson not just for Facebook, but for all the other companies out there, digital or otherwise. There should be some cap on your greed, because once you've alienated everyone on the planet and anyone who might work with you, well, then when you need them, you're not gonna have any friends. And so ironically, their feed is pretty barren here because everybody unfriended them for how they treated everyone else in the business. Now, another really important part though, another part that's illegitimate is that they also have those other media outlets, now that they realize they're not making any money off of Facebook and it was a trap in the first place and they got nothing out of it. Now they're viewing Facebook as a competitor. So, and the TV guys hate all the online guys. So they view Facebook as a giant competitor that's sucking away audience. the content producers don't like Facebook because they get paid almost nothing, whereas on TV they get gazillions of dollars.
Yeah.
So now all the TV guys are like, Facebook is not legitimate. They're not legitimate, right? You must. And what did it? By the way, what do they demand then? They say, don't do any independent media. From now on, if you want to be legitimate, the only people that you can favor are CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS, etc., New York Times, Washington Post, all the old media. If you do anything else, Facebook, you're part of the problem, and Russia and Analytica and this and that. And why do the politicians care? Well, the incumbents love the system where they have all the money and can use TV to win every election. This digital media allows upstarts to beat them. They hate that. They're like, let's go back to the way that it was. Yeah. So that is part of the attacks against Facebook, and understand that that's the context nobody else tells you.
So when you look at the actual strategy of Cambridge Analytica, it was to find out what they called a psychographic makeup of of all their users. And it was crazy where they would just be like, I can go through your likes and find out if you're neurotic and scared, and now I can serve you up an ad that is essentially going to play on that. I think that's the terrifying part of it. And I think when it comes down to it, I also just want to urge people to, in an era where, should I depend on the old mainstream media, or should I depend on independent journalists? And if so, how do I know the difference between the real independent journalists and the ones who are just Russian bots? When it comes down to it, it's just, you have to be able to think for yourself, and you have to not, crater to those instincts in you that see things. It's the same instinct on Facebook as it is with like your best friend who's now or your enemy who had a breakup on Facebook, where you're like, that's the end of you. You have to fight against that instinct and just actually focus on the truth and see where that takes you.
And look, the old media is going to use this scandal, and it is a real legit scandal. The privacy concerns are legitimate. They're going to use it to try to destroy independent media. You have been forewarned, and they will demand of Facebook and every other giant digital media company, you must favor the quote unquote legitimate media, and you must destroy all of our competitors. So that is what they're going to set out to do in the algorithms going forward. And that's the part that none of them ever tell you, because that's an uncomfortable truth for Facebook, and it's a super uncomfortable truth for the old media, who go, no, I am just concerned about Russia and that Cambridge thing. I'm not concerned about my competition at all, but the algorithm should definitely favor me and not anyone else. Keep it real, that's also what's happening here.
All right, we gotta take a break.
All right, we'll be right back. on the Young Turks. Man, lots of YouTube super chats today, which I appreciate. OR writes in, happy birthday, Cenk. Thank you for all that you do. Much love from Canada. What is going on with Canada today? Bless your Canadian hearts. GR writes in, I love Donald Trump's chances of impeachment. Cenk could avail a battle of wits versus no less than 25 Donald Trumps, even if Kushner was there. Okay, that's a fascinating and scary thought. Me versus 25 Donald Trumps. I like me versus them. I don't like 25 Donald Trumps.
It's terrifying. It's the most terrifying image I've ever summoned.
Ron Porter says, happy birthday, Cenk, from a Pennsylvania progressive. Thank you, Ron. The mathematician with a funny tweet here. Cenk and the cat hater Brett Ehrlich for hour 2. I'm taking care of newborn kittens and will train them all to hate Brett.
I have a cat, and I also hate it.
Okay, well, look, truth telling. That's what happens on this show. Okay, maybe we'll pick that back up on the post game, tytnetwork.com/join, because I'm not sure I remember why you hate cats.
They're dumb.
Okay, all right, maybe we'll get back into it and do some more stories as well. And Santos Juante writes in, who else shares a birthday with Cenk Uygur? This guy. Well, happy birthday, Santos. I bet you a lot of Canadians wish you well as well. And there's a bunch of celebrities who have March 21st as their birthday. The only one I remember right now off the top of my head is Rosie O'Donnell.
Really?
Yeah, and there's a bunch of libs who have March 21st as their birthday.
Is this the first day of spring, or is that tomorrow?
I was taught that it is. Our physics teacher told us, he didn't know it was my birthday, that March 21st was the most important day of the year because it was a vernal equinox when everything is in balance.
There you go.
And when I heard that, I was like, yeah, I'm important. And then later became a talk show host.
You're important. I was born on National Pig Day.
By the way, the same physics teacher, that's another story we'll get into later. The same physics teacher was Greek and loved to joke that the sum of all Turks equals 0. Because it's the sum of all Turks that equals 0. And I'm like, that's an inappropriate joke, but that's okay. I like you. God bless. Go forward.
That's amazing. I had a physics teacher who did a bunch in mole day. He would just do mole jokes. Mole is like 10 to the 20. I don't know.
Okay, you know what? In the post game, one more fun story for you guys about another physics teacher I had, who and his Turkish commander.
Okay.
Okay, if you haven't heard that story, you will love that story. tytnetwork.com/join. Okay.
All right. In the fallout of the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal, where has Cambridge Analytica's staff gone and their board of directors? Well, they were banned from Facebook, but the people have gotten the band back together, it seems. That all broke a week ago, and now Rebecca and Jennifer Mercer, daughters of the hedge fund tycoon Robert Mercer, have just joined the board of a mysterious new company. According to public filings at Britain's Companies House, Emerdata was incorporated in August of 2017, and the Mercers were appointed to its board March 16th this year. Who else is on board? Cambridge Analytica is now suspended chief executive Alexander Nix. Have you ever heard of him? Is also listed as a director, as is Julian Wheatland, chairman of Cambridge Analytica parent firm SCL Group. More. Wheatland set up Emerdata along with Cambridge Analytica's chief data officer, Alexander Taylor. And yes, there is even more. Another notable company director is Johnson Chun Shun Ko, the deputy chairman of Frontier Services Group. Who are they? They're a private security firm which mostly operates in Africa and is currently chaired by US businessman and prominent Trump supporter, Eric Prince. Everybody's involved. He's best known for funding private military group Blackwater US and is the brother of US Education Secretary Betsy DeVos.
Okay, so these are some of the worst people on earth. Okay,
so
just
true.
To be clear, okay? So Robert and Rebecca Mercer are like out of a comic book. They're comic book villains. They actually remind me of the family from Girl with a Dragon Tattoo. Like don't go up to the house, okay? And so why do I say that? First of all, they revel in buying politicians. And they spend tens of millions of dollars just buying politicians left and right, and then pretending to be for freedom. And guess what they're looking for out of those politicians? The freedom to have less taxes for their billionaire family, okay? Of course, okay, so then, but like the Koch brothers, they're like, oh, this is all about liberty, right? Your liberty? No, their liberty, okay? So, all right, then they set up this tangled web. Robert Mercer funded Breitbart. Steve Bannon is the head of Breitbart. Then they take Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway. The Mercers had them, and they were part of a contingent that was actually originally supporting Ted Cruz. They'd given $13 million to Ted Cruz. Then they moved them, once Ted Cruz loses, over to Donald Trump. And they tell Donald Trump, hey, we're coming with our bag of money, but you're gonna put these two people into your campaign, Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway. So they insert them into that campaign. Meanwhile, Mercer has also funded Cambridge Analytica, and Cambridge Analytica then goes and basically steals 50 million people's private information, which they then use to help Trump. Now, the Blackwater guys come in. Now, they have private contractors that do security work, is another word for mercenaries. So they have mercenaries that used to operate in America, Blackwater. We actually started that mercenary group by funding it during the Iraq War to go kill people in Iraq with no accountability at all. Once it became so public at how many people they were murdering totally indiscriminately, and they were brought up on charges here in America, they did a cute little thing. You'll love this. They changed the name from Blackwater to Z. I think they changed it one more time. So changing the name to another company is old hat for these guys. And so what happens here? Cambridge Analytica is caught with their hand in the cookie jar. They're in a world of trouble. They take the same exact cast of characters, they move it to a new company with a different name, Emerdata. But the parent group of SCL Group is the same. They have the same address as Emerdata. They're the ones who started Cambridge Analytica in the first place. It's all the same SCL Group. It's the most obvious thing in the world. And part of what Cambridge Analytica got caught on was taking the 50 million users' information from Facebook. The other part was Channel 4 in Britain did a wonderful sting operation on them, sent in an undercover reporter pretending to be from a less developed country, saying, how can you help manipulate my elections? I think you did a wonderful job for Trump. They're like, boy, did we. We did a great job for Trump, and you should see the elections we fixed in Africa. Who else operates in Africa as mercenaries? Oh, right, Eric Prince's group, Frontier, which is also on the board of this new company, right? So, and then they bragged about, oh, we blackmail politicians all the time, we get them prostitutes, then we get them on tape. I've also heard that somewhere else before about getting caught on tape and being extorted. Anyway, and by the way, Eric Prince is the guy who went to a secret meeting in Seychelles Island that was recently revealed, where he met with some of the top Russian officials as an envoy for Donald Trump. So this is a tangled web that they have weaved, but it is not with your best interest in mind. So they want to make money, they want to manipulate elections, and the bottom line is their bottom line, and that's it.
Yeah, it's like the way that they just kind of, you try to knock them down and they come right back up. It's like Hydra in like Marvel. That's what it's just, I don't know, I hate it. I hate it. And most people when they do bad behavior like this, they get caught. They've been caught. Everybody knows who it is who's behind all this stuff. But do they get punished at all? No, they have to just fill out paperwork. That's all it is. They just shuffle paper around and go from this company to that company, and that's it.
Yeah, and look, since they're now so publicly known in the West, so US, UK, it's going to be hard for Republicans, for example, to use Emerdata, even though because it's obvious that it's Cambridge Analytica. It's obvious to us. Some of them use it anyway and go, oh no, Cambridge Analytica, no, there are at least 2 or 3 new people in this company, right? I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, that's some conspiracy theory, right? But mainly, they're going to go make money from manipulating elections in other countries. So what they bragged about in that undercover investigation is, they're like, there's no check in a lot of these African countries. And in the West, we have to kind of basically, they didn't say steal the information, but it is in fact what they did in mining the information from Facebook. But in African countries, the leader who wants to get reelected, and by the way, it's not just African countries, but that was the example that they were using. They just hand us all the data of everyone in the country. And then it's so much easier to manipulate them. And another guy on the tape that works for Cambridge Analytica says, now remember, you have to try to do propaganda without them realizing that it's propaganda. And by the way, where have I seen that movie before?
Yeah.
I think that movie was released in 2016.
But it's interesting, you say that they're so well known in America. Well, they already got their president and they got their tax break.
Yeah, mission accomplished. That tax break, look, created a $1.5 trillion deficit, but when you take into account the money they took out from other parts of the budget and everything else they moved around, some estimates say that that was a $6 trillion tax cut for the rich. Now, what wouldn't you do for $6 trillion? And so what if they get caught and, oh golly gee, you'll never work in this town again. Oh, well, I'll just have to settle for my $6 trillion.
It's rough. We gotta take another break so we can come back with more stories.
Yep, we'll be right back. Young Turks, Cenk and Brett with you guys. Anna will be back tomorrow. She was, of course, helping with the town hall for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. MK Janest writes in on YouTube, Super Chat, continuing the theme for today. Happy birthday, Cenk, another Northerner, but from Maine. TYT is my heart and soul lately. Glad I found you guys. Thank you. That's super nice of you guys. TYTnetwork.com/join and become a member. And that would be greatly appreciated. We got a lot of fun stories for you guys. I also have Rebel Headquarters. The guy who's going to take on Mitt Romney in Utah is going to be on today. Check that out. That's right after the show. Members of the day are Paul Mattern and Meredith Dross. So thank you guys. All right, what's next, Brett?
All right. Millennial women are leaving the GOP in droves. Let's get right to the stats. Between 2002 and 2017, millennial women who identify as Democrat grew from 54% to 70%, according to a new Pew Research poll. Conversely, 23% of millennial women now identify as Republican as compared to 36% in 2002. The amount of millennial men who identified as Democrat has gone from 52 to 49% in that same time frame, so it's gone the other way. About 41% of millennial men identify as Republican compared to 39% in 2002. And then right now, 56% of women lead towards or affiliate themselves with the Democratic Party compared with only 44% of men.
All right, this is a super important story. First, let me note the bad news. The fact that millennial men have slipped a little bit is disconcerting. Now, it's still it's nice size advantage for Democrats. It's 49 to 41 at this point. That's 8-point lead, pretty damn good. But it used to be a little bit larger than that. Now, but what's more important is the size of the lead among women because it is so large. It used to be back in 2002, 54 to 36. That's already pretty sizable. That's almost 20 points. That's a giant lead among women. But if you can hold men in all age groups, you could still survive, as they just did in 2016, eking out a victory. Even though they lost the popular vote, they got men at a much greater rate, and they snuck in there by the skin of their teeth, literally by 78,000 votes in 3 states. That's what made the difference, right? But now that these trends are amplified and continue to multiply over time, they're in for a world of hurt, because now millennial women are 70 to 23.
That's crazy.
Okay, you cannot overcome a 70 to 23 lead among 50% of the population. And so now millennial women are not the majority of women at this point, but they're coming. And so that army of Democratic women are coming in a big way. Now, that doesn't mean Democrats should be complacent and just play identity politics. I know that's what the establishment interprets it as. Oh, great, mission accomplished. Let's just now do nothing, right?
Right.
You have to earn their trust and continue to earn their trust. And they are mainly rebelling against the Republican Party. But the Democrats have to give them something to actually root for.
There was an op-ed recently in the Washington Post that I guess it was today, that pointed out another little aspect of this to kind of close the circle, which was women who identify as Democrats, according to a recent poll, were significantly more likely to say they were absolutely certain to actually go and vote in 2018 than their peers who say they're either independent or Republican. So it's a growing number of people, of women who are millennials, who say that they're Democrat, and they are extremely likely to actually put that new ideological affiliation into practice at the polls.
And it makes sense. If you're a young woman, why in God's green earth would you be for the Republican Party that has policy positions that look to defund Planned Parenthood, fight against equal pay, take away your right to control your own body, let alone other issues like being against LGBT rights, which for millennials sounds insane. You're really gonna go back in time and discriminate against gay people? And the list goes on and on. Every year that millennials become voting age is another year that the Republican Party fades into the dustbin of history. So right now, as they control all the levers of power, it seems like you guys that can't be the case. But the reality is they are on their last legs, and you will see that in elections to come. In fact, you're seeing it right now in the special elections. When people are actually motivated to go vote, it's not even close.
So why are men going up in terms of Republican affiliation? Is that wobble or what?
Let's talk about that in the post game.
Okay.
TYTnetwork.com/join, because that is a really important trend, and I do want to discuss it. Well, let's do that for the members.
Okay, so here's a story. NAFTA is being renegotiated according to the president. There's a lot of different parts to it. And there is one portion in particular that actually has to do with junk food and labeling of junk food. Urged, according to the New York Times, it was on the cover today, urged on by big American food and soft drink companies, the Trump administration is using the trade talks with Mexico and Canada to try to limit the ability of the pact's 3 members to warn consumers about the dangers of junk food, according to confidential documents outlining the American position. The American provision seeks to prevent any warning symbol, shape, or color that, quote, inappropriately denotes that a hazard exists from consumption of the food or non-alcoholic beverages. And then just to connect this Trump to who's behind it, the Trump administration's position on food labeling rejects the desires of a broad coalition, reflects the desires of soft drink and packaged food manufacturers in the United States.
Of course it does. So I know that people in Washington consider me radical left, but some people are on to me being a moderate. So do I believe in free trade? Yes. But of course it depends. It depends on what's in the trade deal. So I don't think we should do tariffs, and I don't think that's helpful. The aluminum and steel tariffs that Trump did now are going to backfire and hurt the economy. On the other hand, that doesn't mean we should hand off carte blanche all of our negotiation to multinational corporations. They don't have our best interests in mind. By law, they must have their own best interests in mind. They are there to maximize profits. And these so-called free trade deals are in reality just a way to let corporations write the rules. And of course they're gonna say, oh, we're doing an important trade deal. Mexico and Canada wanna make sure that we don't label our food. No, they don't. They never said that. Well, the US does. No, actually, we wanna label the food. So who's actually writing the law? The corporations.
Like 100% explicitly writing the law. And this preempts the other countries. That's one part of it is the countries that we're doing these pacts with, it keeps them from making their own laws, which if someone did that to us, you know they'd be super upset about it.
So what this does, and that's why conservatives should actually be furious about it, and they were, that's why they elected Trump, and Trump said he was against NAFTA. Now, what's he doing? NAFTA, hand over corporate power. So why would our conservatives furious about it? Because it takes away our sovereignty. It says the American citizens are not in charge. Multinational corporations are in charge of our laws to maximize their profits, sometimes at a cost to all of us. And that's what's wrong with these trade deals. All right, we gotta go, guys. Brett, thank you. We'll come back for the post game. I got Rebel headquarters coming up next. In the post game, we got a lot of topics. TYTnetwork.com/join. Bye-bye. Rebel headquarters. If you guys want to suggest guests for us, we are looking for progressives. They could be candidates, they could be leaders of groups. All is welcome. Email us at rebelhq@tytnetwork.com, and that is where we get a lot of our guests. We got two great guests for you guys tonight. We're going to start with Mitchell Weiss. So joining us now at Rebel headquarters is Mitchell Weiss. He is running in Utah for the Senate seat. He's going to be up against Mitt Romney. That's going to be fun. Mitchell, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Cenk.
No problem. Mitchell, is it true that right now you don't have any opponents in the Democratic primary?
No, there are actually 3 opponents.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah, so I saw that in my notes. I'm like, that can't be true.
Yeah.
So then what differentiates you from the other 3 folks in the primary?
Well, I don't know 2 of them, to be honest. They recently filed just a couple days before the deadline with the state. The other opponent that I do know, she's Councilwoman Jenny Wilson, and she is, the status quo. So what I differentiate myself from her is I'm more progressive. I stand for Medicare for all. I'm opposed to the death penalty. And I just have more progressive, more working class stances and concerns than I feel she does.
Okay, you've got on your priorities war on drugs. What's your stance on that?
Well, the war on drugs is basically, it's a racist system set up to monetize, privatize prisons and create slave labor, if I could be that blunt. But,
yeah, you can be, and you just did. And when a lot of the prisoners are working for $1 a day, not even $1 an hour, yeah, that's modern day slavery, unfortunately. And so if you're fighting against that, well then bless your heart. You've also got tribal sovereignty on your list, which I don't see very often on folks' lists for priorities. So I imagine that's more of an issue in Utah, but what's your stance on tribal sovereignty?
Well, my stance is that there hasn't been tribal sovereignty. It is an issue here in Utah. Recently, we had a state House representative propose a joint resolution to ask Congress to exempt Utah from the Antiquities Act. And I went up to the Hill and spoke against that. Their reasoning was the Antiquities Act, making monuments and taking monuments away, was basically political football, and they wanted to be exempt from the president's whim. But in reality, we have a real problem with gerrymandering in the areas of our state that have heavy tribal populations, native populations. And the Antiquities Act is the only act that, while protecting the environment, also protects constitutional rights of Native Americans. And so exempting us from the Antiquities Act would basically take tons of rights away from Native tribes.
All right, well, good to see somebody fighting for the tribes, and that's a positive step forward to have someone in the race doing that. So Mitchell, you say in your bio you're a working class father. So why all of a sudden get into politics when you weren't in politics before?
Well, in 2016, I felt the burn. And for the first time, I felt my resignation and cynicism crack. And so I got involved. I donated to the campaign. I phone banked. I canvassed. I got out there because more than hope for change, we had plans for action. And when the dust settled, I wanted to keep that momentum in my heart and in my mind and in my spirit going. And now that I had something to stand for, something that I was committed to, it was time to just keep that going. And as I looked around the state, in my particular district in Salt Lake City, we're represented pretty well by Democrats in general. But we also fight things like heavily gerrymandered congressional districts and precincts that really favor Republicans. So the statewide race was really the most fair race you can probably run in Utah because, it's the whole show. So it's just a matter of it going out there and connecting with people. And that's what I was really drawn to. Of course, Orrin Hatch was controversial and he wasn't polling very well about a year ago when we started this campaign, but that was still irrelevant. We really looked at the possibility of every American thriving as a message that we could have resonate with the people of Utah. And what I was really committed to was engaging with the people and helping them see past their cynicism and resignation and really show that with action and commitment, we could effectuate real change.
Okay, let's say that you win the Democratic Party. How are you going to take down Mitt Romney? I mean, the guy's a juggernaut. He's got all that money. He's beloved in the state of Utah. So how do you attack him and win the race?
Well, we are both Mormon returned missionaries from France. And I don't know if it's an attack. To me, it's still more about communicating with the voters and the people of the state. We're never going to raise as much money as Mitt Romney has. But again, the Democratic Party, they'll outspend Republicans sometimes 10-1 and still lose because I don't think their message is really resonating and they're not energizing their base and they're not reaching out beyond their bubble and spectrum. So our goal has just been outwork, out-connect, and out-engage the competition. We're even managing that within the party itself. My opponent, she's raised $500,000, but she's spent over $300,000, and we haven't even gone to convention yet. And we're practically a completely volunteer campaign right now, conserving our resources and being very judicious with what we have, and we're being very effective. And in our estimation, we're outproducing the competition.
All right. Everybody check out votevice.com. I want to put up all the links here for you guys for donations of volunteers. Of course, that'll be, where is it going to be? It's going to be in the description box below if you're watching on YouTube, and in the comment section on Facebook. You know it. Mitchell Weiss taking on the good fight in Utah. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Jake. And happy birthday from another Aries.
All right, excellent. Thank you.
See ya.
All right, guys, when we come back, we're switching states. We're going to Colorado. We're going to talk to a person who's a state rep there who's running for attorney general. That's a really important race. So let's talk about that when we return. All right, back on Rebel headquarters. Let's go to our next guest. Joe Salazar joins us now. He's running for Attorney General in Colorado. He's currently in his 4th term in the Colorado State House of Representatives. Joe, welcome to the program.
What's up, my man? How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Doing all right. Just here in Aspen, Colorado for the Pitkin County Assembly.
All right, sounds fun. So this is a very important position, Attorney General in Colorado. I want first people to understand the difference between what an Attorney General does at the state level and at the federal level. So what is the Attorney General in Colorado charged with?
So the Attorney General is charged with, here in the state of Colorado, of number one, representing the people of the state of Colorado from on multiple things, such as consumer protection issues against oil and gas, particularly when they pollute our environment, on Medicaid fraud, on representing state departments and agencies. But primarily, the main client of the Attorney General's office is the people of the state of Colorado. And the biggest difference between the federal Attorney General and the state's Attorney General is that this federal Attorney General is messing things up, and we're having to come through and fix them.
Yeah, so is it possible that if you're the Attorney General of Colorado and Jeff Sessions says we're sending in federal forces to make sure that that marijuana cannot be sold in the state of Colorado, that you would get into some conflict with him, and how would that conflict be resolved?
Absolutely, the conflict would be resolved in the courts. Obviously, Colorado is a recreational medical marijuana state. It's something that was voted on by an overwhelming majority of our voters, and we would use the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, the States' Rights Amendment, to stop the federal government from its overreach.
Okay, and so right now you've got a Republican who's the Attorney General, but she's going to run for the governor's seat. So how would you handle things differently than her?
Well, number one is we'd have a happier work environment. It's not a very happy work environment. I serve as vice chair of the House Judiciary Committee that oversees the Attorney General's office. We're the oversight committee. And so I would change that work environment. People will want to work at that Attorney General's office. Number two is I would change things completely when it comes to oil and gas industry. This Attorney General is allowing the oil and gas industry to just basically run amok here in the state of Colorado. A good example is that we had an explosion back in April of a house that killed 2 people, injured 1 other, and it was caused by the oil and gas industry. This Attorney General's office, which is supposed to protect the people of the state of Colorado, has done nothing to protect the state. So that's one thing. The other thing is that joining all the other attorneys general throughout the United States that are going after this administration on the rollbacks on the Clean Water Act, on the methane rules, protecting our transgender soldiers and sailors, protecting our DACA kids. I mean, you name it. There's an awful lot that I would do.
Okay, I want to show the links a little bit earlier here today, and you could always click on them really easy by going to the description box on YouTube or comment section on Facebook, depending on where you're watching this. But Joe, I wanted to make sure people had your information, but I also want to talk about the 2 things that you brought up there. One is the explosion, and I had not heard about that. And down in Austin, we had about 500 cops that were investigating explosions that killed 2 people. Now, I get it, and people were scared to death because these boxes were appearing places and then blowing up and killing people, etc. But 2 people dead there. It was a domestic terrorist who did it, and all this attention. A different explosion in Colorado, but really wealthy corporations did it. 2 people died just the same, and almost nothing that people do about it. Is it that it's the disproportionate influence of corporations over elected officials?
Absolutely. That's the biggest problem here in the state of Colorado when it comes to going after the oil and gas industry. I'm a legislator who runs bills every single year against this industry in order to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public and the environment. This Attorney General has been utterly and absolutely absent when it comes to holding this industry accountable. I'll tell you another thing, is that while that accident happened in April of last year, there have been 13 other accidents since then, also resulting in deaths, and nothing at all from this Attorney General. It's that corporate influence money that is just really hurting our democracy here in the state of Colorado, as well as the rest of the United States. This campaign has been endorsed by Our Revolution, by Progressive Democrats for America, by Voters for Pro-Choice, because I don't take, and I've been elected 3 times over, I don't take that special interest in corporate money.
All right, I like that kind of talk. So you mentioned, it's a quick aside, you mentioned it'd be a happier workplace. Why? What's going on in the workplace now in the Attorney General's office?
You know, I think that there's a sadness there because the attorneys, the assistant attorneys general who work there, they want to engage in this fight against this Trump administration. They are itching to defend this state, and they're being hamstrung by this current attorney general. I'm gonna unshackle them and allow them to do their jobs to protect this state.
All right, that is clear. So let me go to some of the other things that are on your not just priority list, but legislation that you've helped to either introduce or pass. And these are local to Colorado, so I don't know what they are, and I want to know. This is a fun one. Colorado Right to Rest Act. Man, I'd love a right to rest. Okay, what is that?
It's to stop the criminalization of the homeless here in the state of Colorado. We have a number of municipalities that have passed ordinances that criminalize the very basic human need to rest, the very basic human need to cover oneself up with a blanket from the elements, the very basic human need to eat. We have criminalized that in some of our municipalities. So I bring a bill every year to fight back on behalf of the homeless community to stop that criminalization. It doesn't work. There are sheriffs across the state, and particularly in Boulder County, who have said that it doesn't work. And so we're trying to stop that criminalization.
Joe, I see what's going on here. The homeless are giving you a lot of donations, aren't they?
Nah, man, the homeless aren't giving me any donations. They come by and say hi and they give me hugs, but that's about it.
All right, it's almost as if you want to represent actual human beings. All right, what's the Ralph Carr Freedom Defense Act?
Ralph Carr Freedom Defense Act is a bill that I drafted last year in anticipation of the election of this really horrid Trump administration. And what it does is that under the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, what we are saying is that we are going to block the federal overreach of trying to commandeer our local law enforcement for immigration purposes, for trying to establish any type of internment camps, for trying to gain access to information that would violate a person's constitutional rights. That's what this bill is about. We're bringing it back this year. It failed in a Republican-controlled Senate, and we're bringing the bill back this coming year, in fact, in the next couple of weeks, in order to let people know that we are here. We will use the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution to protect them and to stop the terrorization of this federal government.
You know, it's funny because the Republicans used to pretend to be in favor of states' rights and the 10th Amendment. They couldn't stop talking about the 10th Amendment when it was to keep black folks down in the South. Now, all of a sudden, when you guys want to legalize marijuana or you want to protect your own citizens, all of a sudden they got no use for the 10th Amendment. Funny how that turns out.
Well, I'll tell you something that's funny is I wrote the bill. We have bill drafters, but I'm a constitutional civil rights attorney. So I wrote this bill and I drafted it using the words of Justice Scalia, who was a big 10th Amendment advocate. And you should have seen those Republicans trying to argue against this bill in the well. They couldn't argue against it, so instead they attacked the name of the bill, which is Ralph Carr, who was a Republican conservative governor back in the 1940s who protected the Japanese from internment.
Yeah, that seems classy. All right, I have one more question for you, Representative Salazar. Along with your other priorities, you've got teaching competent history in public schools as one of the things on your to-do list. What do you mean competent history in public schools?
So right now, and the bill actually passed out of committee a couple of days ago. Right now here in the state of Colorado, there's a mandate that school districts teach multicultural history in our school districts. But as we've looked across the state, we have school districts that aren't teaching about slavery. We have school districts that aren't teaching about, the true nature of Columbus or about American history, American Indian history, none of those things. So what this bill does is it sets up a commission of experts who are members of these directly impacted communities to help draft a model curriculum that would be recommended to be taught by the school districts throughout the state of Colorado. And there's a reason for that. Number one is that a Stanford University study shows that when you teach history in that fashion, all students, not just the students of color, all students' grades increase substantially. The attendance rate goes up substantially, and they find that the students become kinder to each other. They become better citizens. They become friendlier to each other because now there's empathy that is developed amongst them, and now they start understanding one another. That's one of the reasons why I'm bringing this bill.
I can't help but ask one more question. I get all the rest of it. I'm really curious, and I don't know if you know this, but why did the grades go up?
Because these students are all of a sudden very much invested in their education, because now they're learning about themselves and about the contributions of their ancestors and of current folks. So they become very much invested in their education, and we see that their grade points, their percentage, their grade point average raise, they raise up quite a bit.
All right, fascinating. I learned something new today. I appreciate that. Let's put up the links one more time for Representative Salazar. I always say donations are great and really important because he's not taking corporate cash, and he hasn't in all of his races. But also volunteers make all the difference. So go to Salazar for COAG, as in Colorado Attorney General.com. And all the links will be down below on YouTube and Facebook. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you guys. Love you guys.
Thank you. All right. Nothing but love today. Wonderful. So I got a couple minutes left. I wanted to really quickly go over a couple of things for you guys. I know at the risk of overdoing it, I keep telling you the volunteers are super important. So AllisonHartson.com/now. I really want to get her to 2,000 volunteers. We can beat Feinstein. I was talking to somebody on the phone about it today, and it is so doable. There's almost no one else in the race that has this kind of volunteer army that has raised this much in small dollar donations. AllisonHartson.com/now. And by the way, of course, the donations also matter. So JusticeDemocrats.com/Allison. She's at almost 8,000 individual donors. Let's put her over the top on that. So remember those two things, AllisonHartson.com/now and JustDemocrats.com/Allison. And if you guys can help with that, that would be amazing. Thank you guys. And for all you members, we'll see you guys in the postgame. We're talking about why millennial men actually have started to become a little bit more Republican, which is disconcerting, and I have a theory on that. So let's do that at the postgame, tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. All right, thank you guys. We'll see you there.